Everyone, welcome to The Zest, the official podcast of Orange Coast Magazine. I'm Chelsea Ranieri, and today's guest is the guitarist and longtime member of the iconic band No Doubt, which was famously formed in Anaheim back in 1986. He's also part of Dreamcar, the 80s pop group that blends members of No Doubt and AFI. This month marks the 30-year anniversary of No Doubt's album, Tragic Kingdom, which features hits such as Spiderwebs, Just a Girl, Don't Speak, and more. Thank you so much for being here today, Tom Dumont.
You're welcome. Hi, Chelsea. Thanks for having me.
Oh my God, of course. I have to tell you, I have this very specific memory. I grew up in Huntington Beach, and my neighbor a few doors down was the one who showed me Tragic Kingdom. And I just remember how it shaped our childhood. We did karaoke to all the songs growing up.
Well, wait. How old were you?
Oh gosh.
I got to ask. Well, you don't have to say, but you were a kid.
No, I think I was probably in elementary school around that age. Okay.
Awesome.
But it made such a big impact on me. And even to this day, I have a friend and her go-to karaoke song is Spiderwebs. And every time she plays that, everyone in the bar will just go insane. So
I love that.
Just so iconic. Yeah.
I love that. That's awesome.
Awesome. Well, I read that you grew up in Irvine, which is where I live now. What were you like as a kid?
Well, let's see. I grew up in Irvine. I was born in, I'll go through some dates real quick. I was born in 1968. My family moved to Irvine, I think, when I was about 5 years old, and pretty much lived there until I moved out as a grown up. So I was, it was just kind of a classic suburban, 70s Orange County life, riding bikes, taking the bus to school, just running around the neighborhood, skateboards, all that stuff. And then my family, we lived in Irvine the whole time. We moved around a few times. We ended up moving to Woodbridge, and that was exciting.
Way.
Yeah. And
That's so cool.
Yeah, my dad still lives there now. So maybe when I was about 12 years old is when I got interested in music. And at that time, so this is around 1980. And around that time, music was the big cultural thing. It was television, movies, and music. There was no internet. There were no YouTubers, nothing like that. And I fell in love with music. I had a record player, and I listened to all kinds of stuff. I listened to, I had an older sister and a younger brother. My older sister loved, kind of, I guess, that kind of late 70s, just rock and roll, hard rock, heavy metal, all that stuff. And somebody got me a Kiss album for Christmas when I was 12, I think. And that was it. I just wanted to learn to play guitar and be, like Ace Frehley from Kiss, without the makeup, I guess.
Yeah. Wait, what a cool older sister.
Yeah. She was super cool. And she learned to play guitar, and she kind of helped teach me to play guitar. So yeah, when I was 12, my dad actually had an old funky acoustic guitar in his closet that I started messing with, and he saw I was interested in that. And he got me guitar lessons at the local music store, and I took to it quickly, and I just went from there. And my sister taught me stuff because she was pretty good at that point.
Wow, that's amazing. Well, you started off playing in a heavy metal band called Rising. So what kind of a guitar were you playing at that point, and how did that early experience shape your guitar style?
Yeah, so actually before Rising, I played in my junior high school. I had a couple of friends at Lakeside Middle School, and one was a drummer. I just became friends with this kid named Chip, and I went to his house one day after school, and he had a drum set, and he's like, check this out. And he played the drums, and it just blew my mind. This guy was 12 years old, and he was just shredding on the drums. And so my friend Chip and I had another friend named Richie, and we started a band, and we played the Lakeside Talent Show. And that went into high school. We all went to Woodbridge High School. And then my older sister, who I mentioned, she was 3 years older than me, and she had a heavy metal band with her boyfriend, who was the singer, and that was the band Rising. And so I started playing with them, and they were playing at nightclubs in Orange County. So back in those days, it was this place called Night Moves in Huntington Beach, just these kind of divey heavy metal clubs. There were a bunch of them all over Orange County at that time. And so that was exciting. I was still friends with my old buddies from high school, but I started playing in my sister's heavy metal band for a number of years until I went to college, and then the No Doubt chapter started.
Yeah. Well, you studied music theory at Orange Coast College, which I also went to.
Oh yeah.
But what did you take away from that experience?
I loved Orange Coast College. I was probably a kid with undiagnosed ADHD, and I was a spaz, and I would not do my homework. I couldn't do it to save my life, but I enjoyed school. I enjoyed learning. I read books, all that, but I just couldn't do my homework. So of course I couldn't go to a good college like my brother and sister. So not that Orange Coast College is not good, but you know what I mean?
Right.
I had to go to community college. And I lucked out because, and I found out in college you could be a music major. And so I enrolled in Orange Coast College's music program. And they had this professor, and I still remember her name was Edith Smith. And she was like a classical professor. And I went through her 2-year music theory program. And I learned a lot. And she was incredible and just really opened my mind to a lot of stuff. And I took, guitar classes there. And then, and then at some point I did transfer then to Cal State Fullerton. And that's kind of happened right when I met No Doubt. And they were all going to Fullerton. And so instead of going to UCI where my brother and sister went, I went to Fullerton and continued the music program there.
What fate though? So how did you meet all of them?
So the No Doubt story was there was a one of these kind of dark, divey rehearsal studios in Anaheim. That at that time, that was the place I felt like all the bands went. So Rising used to rehearse there. You'd rent like there was a hallway and band rehearsal rooms up and down the hall with little windows on the doors, right? And it was $5 an hour. And that place, it was called Stomp Box, and it was mostly heavy metal and punk bands. And so Rising rehearsed there a bunch. And every so often when Rising was there, we would peek in and see the other bands rehearsing, which was kind of cool. They had little windows on the door. And everybody used to, look at the other bands. It was always interesting. And it was a friendly atmosphere. And No Doubt would rehearse there. And No Doubt was completely unlike any of the other bands. So all punk and heavy metal bands, all very dude oriented and Marshall stacks. And No Doubt was like just different. They had a horn section. They had a guy doing backflips, and they had this blonde girl singing. And the music they were playing was, I didn't quite know what it was. And they were just unique. And what was cool is all the very macho heavy metal and punk bands seemed to dig No Doubt, just the fact that they were in there doing their thing and they were unique. And so what happened was one day I decided to quit my sister's band Rising, which was kind of difficult in many ways. But I just wanted to go another direction. And so I remember I had left my amp over at the Stomp Box rehearsal studios in Anaheim, and I went over there during the day to pick it up. And when I got over there, there was like a bulletin board, on the wall, and it had a flyer. No Doubt needs a guitar player, and it had the little strips of paper with a phone number on it. And I'm like, that No Doubt band is really interesting. And I thought, I'm going to call them. And then instead of taking just one phone number, I took the whole flyer down so that nobody else would see it. And that's kind of, what happened. I called. And I went to a rehearsal, and I had back in those days, I had beautiful, long, curly blonde hair, and I didn't fit in, but they were super welcoming. And this is 1988. And so my first show with No Doubt was opening this big ska show in downtown LA. And we played in front of like 1,000 people, which in those days was a big deal. Like my heavy metal band would play in front of 20 people. And so with No Doubt, it was exciting. And I learned very quickly about the, ska music, and that's where No Doubt was coming from in those days. And I had a pretty broad musical palette, even though I loved hard rock and all that. I listened to Steel Pulse and I listened to Oingo Boingo, and those two in particular, I was like, okay, No Doubt is like Boingo Boingo meets Steel Pulse, the female singer, new wavy, and I loved it. And they were just super warm and fun and nice, and it was exciting. And nobody ever officially said, Tom, you're in the band, but I was like, I kept, coming to rehearsals and gigs, and that's kind of how that started.
God, what a dream. That's like such an amazing,
it's
like how fortuitous that just happened like that.
It just happened. And within a year after I joined, there were, No Doubt's history is kind of out there. There was a really sad thing that happened before I joined the band where they used to have two singers, Gwen and a guy named John Spence, who was their high school buddy. And John tragically committed suicide about a year or so before I joined. And so the band was really, they had this cool local following, but personally, there was a lot of turmoil because of John. It was a devastating thing for them. And so when I came in the band, it was kind of after that, and the band was kind of a little bit of reinventing itself. And then Adrian, our drummer, joined about a year after I did in '89. He was the new guy, and me and Adrian got along. And so at that point, the core of the band, we just became really tight friends, and it kind of kept developing. We kept doing shows. We moved into the band house in Anaheim, and we started doing little tours. We got a record deal in 1992. We put out a record that nobody bought, but we toured the U.S. a couple times in vans, which was so fun.
Yeah,
it was really it's an exciting time in my life. I look back on all that with a lot of good memories.
Yeah, well, one that I wanted to bring up was I read a story about how you wrote a poem about being addicted to TV. Eric Stefani. So can you share a bit about that?
Yeah. So I was in college. I was at Cal State Fullerton, and I lived in the band house. So it was Eric Stefani, Eric and Gwen's grandparents' house. So their grandparents had passed away, and her parents kept the house and rented it to us. So, I rented a room. Eric lived there, and a couple other people came in and out. Adrian lived there for a little while, and we set up a garage. We soundproofed the garage, and we set up a, makeshift recording studio in there. Oh, and so me and Eric hung out a lot, and he was the piano player and Gwen's brother, and he was at that point, I would say, the driving creative force in the band. And this is, early 90s. And I had written a poem, and I think it's actually the same subject matter I think about a lot. Television addiction was the thing back then. There was no internet, no phones.
Right.
But it's crazy because, Eric took that poem, which was, nothing special. It was just, my observations about the world and this idea of being trapped in a box and by the television box. And Eric wrote it into a song, and it kind of ended up being the first, single on the first No Doubt album. And we made a music video and all that, and we did not get it played, I don't think, on MTV or anything, but and so to me it's kind of crazy because now everyone in the world is addicted to their phones, which is another kind of box.
Right. Wow. Yeah, just replaced the TV.
Yeah, it was a much better version, I guess. Worse and better.
Right. Yeah, my wrist hurts from being on the phone too much. I know, it's so bad. Well, before Tragic Kingdom, you were working as a file clerk at a mortgage company. Mm-hmm. So how did it feel to quit that job and go all in on music and then just blow up?
It felt really crazy. Yeah, it was, I was stoked. That was my first job that wasn't in food service and in restaurants or delivering flowers. Or I actually used to work at Irvine Meadows Amphitheater. I used to flip burgers and sell beers there. Cool. But the mortgage thing was like filing clerk, and it was an office with people in suits, and me and this other guy were in the back room dealing with the files, and I was making $10 an hour, which at that time I thought, I'm rich. So, so that was, it's funny. I'm a little bit of an introvert, and I could be kind of a black sheep. And in that office, the filing clerks were the black sheep, and it was really fun. They all knew I was in a band. They're like, "Oh yeah, Tom's in a band, great, whatever. Don't ask me to come to see your band or any of that." But then I never went back, of course, after No Doubt, took off and became successful. But yeah, I wonder what they all thought. They probably were just like,
I know, right?
What the hell?
Yeah.
That knucklehead. We're sitting here selling mortgages, and yeah, it was an exciting, it was kind of a whirlwind that the success happened, because it was, the success of Tragic Kingdom. So yeah, we put out that first album in 92. Tragic Kingdom was a battle to be made. So between 92 and 95, when Tragic Kingdom came out, like all this stuff happened. Gwen's brother, Eric, quit the band. He was unhappy for various reasons, and he was, pursuing his career as he was an animator. Oh. And yeah, he worked for The Simpsons even back then.
What?
Yeah, he was
so cool.
Animator on The Simpsons. Yeah, super talented, creative guy. So he left the band, and that was traumatic in many ways, especially for Gwen, because that was her big brother. She loved him, and then the famously Tony and Gwen's relationship. Tony was our bass player of No Doubt. Tony and Gwen's relationship fractured. They broke up, and that was really dramatic. But it was in the middle of making Tragic Kingdom, and so yeah, and then that title of Tragic Kingdom, I had this shop teacher that used to call Disneyland the Tragic Kingdom, and I told that story to the band, and they're like, "That's a great name for a song," and that became the title of the album, because we lived near Disneyland. That was the hook of it. We lived near Disneyland, and but there was all this tragedy happening. The history of the band, John Spence's suicide, and Eric quitting the band was traumatic in many ways, and Gwen and Tony's relationship was, their breakup was traumatic, and so that title just stuck and made so much sense. And so by the time we put the album out, it came out in October of 95. Right. So this is crazy. 30 years ago. I can't believe the time has passed.
I know.
It's very surreal. At this point, it goes really fast. But so the album, I really think we were going to put this album out and most likely go on with our lives. Everybody was in college, finished school, and go on and get real jobs and be normal people. I mean, really, I think that's what everybody expected. And I think it's part of why Gwen, and this is my observation, that she was able to kind of pour her heart and her experiences into those lyrics, because I think we all had the impression that no one was ever going to really hear it. So you're not like you're not being too vulnerable, because no one expected it to become successful. But then it did slowly, slowly it came out, and we went on the road in September of 95, and we ended up basically being on tour for almost 2 years straight. I mean, we would come home, but it was like, we'd be gone for 2 weeks, we'd home for a week, we'd be gone for a month, we'd be home for 2 weeks. And we started, playing empty clubs across America, and we ended in 97. It was like the album just slowly climbed and climbed and climbed and sold and sold and sold. We went around the world. We went to Europe a whole bunch. We went to Asia. We went to South America. We went everywhere we could, just about. And in the end, we toured America playing sold out arenas and sheds. So it's very surreal, and a very surreal transition in all of our lives that none of us, I don't think, really saw coming.
That is so incredible. So 97, that makes sense, because I'm 33. So 97, I would have been 5. Yeah. That's heard it. So I heard it then. Yeah. So it's been with me my whole life. So it's like
in your brain forever. And that's the power of music. It's like, for some reason, the music I listen to, I like to listen to new music as much as I can, but the comfort food of music is the stuff we listened to as our brains were developing when we were kids and teenagers. It's going to be in us forever.
Yeah, so true. Unfortunately for my husband, it also includes Justin Bieber.
That's all right.
But, yeah. Well, in 2006, Matt Costa's album "Songs We Sing" was released, and he was also on this podcast, and you produced that album. So, how did you guys come to work together?
Yeah, I met my now wife in 2001, and we ended up getting married in 2004. And she was really cool, LA girl, and she ended up moving down to Long Beach. She moved in with me, and she got a job at Ruka Clothing down in Newport. RVCA or whatever, right?
Yeah.
And at the time when she started at Ruka, there were like 4 people working there, and it was like a warehouse the size of this room.
No
and
way.
she was designing their women's or girls line or whatever. And Matt Costa used to hang out at Ruka all the time, and I would go down there and hang out, and they would have these cool parties. And the guy Pat, who was the founder of Ruka, said, "Tom, I know, because No Doubt was on some kind of a hiatus. He's like, I know you're not busy. You should meet Matt Costa and hang out with him and produce some music for him." And so I did. I really enjoyed being in the studio and recording, and I had never really produced anything before. And so Matt came over to my house in my little home studio, and we just hung out and we got along, and I became an instant fan. He's such a talented guy, and we started recording stuff in my home studio. And he was really an acoustic guitarist. So, his first album that I ended up producing, we just had this idea. I said, look, let's just make an album here at my house. And, I will pay, because I had some money from No Doubt. So I said, I'll pay to print up 1,000 copies. And what we'll do is we'll go to your shows and we'll just give out copies. Because I used to hate going to see local bands, and they would play and they'd say, you could buy our CD for $10 at the t-shirt booth. And I'm like, don't make people buy it. Just give it. The more people hear music, it's like a drug, right?
Yeah.
So what we would do at Matt Costa shows, and he was great live, and he really had a lot of people dig what he did. So we would go to his shows, and he would just say, I'm giving away CDs at the t-shirt booth after I play. And we would just take people's email addresses down. And so within, 6 months or a year, we had given away all the 1,000 CDs. We ended up printing up a whole bunch more. We had a ton of people on his mailing list. And then, long story short, he ended up, a friend of mine was managing Jack Johnson. And so Jack fell in love with Matt's CD, and Jack invited Matt to go on tour with Jack. And Jack was huge, playing sold out places. And we did the same thing. So I toured America with Matt for a summer, and we started selling his CDs at that point because there was like a demand. And we sold a buttload of CDs, and Jack put his stuff out on Jack's label. And that was a really fun time. And I'm so glad I'm still friends with Matt. He's still so creative. He scores movies, and he makes movies, and he does these incredible live. It's a live band doing a live score for his films in movie theaters, and he's in New York doing that right now, I think. So anyway, Matt, it was really fun. So I thought for a while, like, I want to be a record producer. But then I got married, I started having kids, and I know what being in the studio as a record producer means. It's 12-hour days, like 5 days, 6 days a week. And I'm like, really, I like being home. I don't want to be gone, 60 hours a week or whatever. So my producing career kind of fizzled, mostly because I'm lazy and I like being home. So that's that. Yeah.
But that's cool. Like that you got to do the one that you did was like so incredible.
Yeah. I love Matt. He's great.
Yeah. Well, tell me about Dreamcar and how that band came together.
So Dreamcar. So just to go through a little bit of the No Doubt history. So No Doubt made a handful of albums, and then in 2002 or 3 played the Super Bowl halftime. Amazing. That was pretty incredible. And Gwen had, it's like ancient history now, but it was back when bands like actually kind of played live, and it was bands, not whatever. But Gwen had decided she wanted to take a break from the band and do her solo thing. And she was, we were all like encouraging of her, or what's the word? We were like supportive of her, and she was really cool about it. She said, I'm not quitting No Doubt. I just want to do this thing. And I want to do different style of music that doesn't make sense for No Doubt. And we're like, cool. And Tony ended up working with her on a bunch of that. So I had a lot of free time. And so then I produced some Matt Costa stuff in 2006. I started having babies. My wife started having babies and became a stay-at-home dad. And so No Doubt got back together to make an album in 2008. And we ended up going on tour in 2009. And we did a US tour again, which was really fun. And then we would play intermittent shows, and we started trying to make a new album. And things got dodgy. I don't know what the word is. Things got weird, and not weird. Gwen, we put out an album in 2012, and I was, proud of certain aspects of it. And I think certain aspects of that were really good. That was an album called Push and Shove. Mm-hmm. But it was a tumultuous time in some of our lives. And we didn't go on tour after that album. And we started trying to make another album. But I think Gwen had it in her head, and she was actively doing another solo album. So when we realized that, we thought, well, me and Tony and Adrian, we were like, best friends, and we got along so well musically and just as people. And we thought, man, we want to keep playing. Gwen's going to go off and do her own thing, and that could be another 5 years or who knows how long. And we started thinking, let's try to do a side band, for fun, and definitely not with a female singer, because that would be too weird. You know what I mean?
Right.
So we thought, well, we got to find a male singer, and we talked a lot about different people. And Tony knew Davey Havoc from AFI, the singer of AFI. Mm-hmm. From the LA kind of vegan scene, I guess. Oh. And so, because Tony's vegan and Davey is vegan, and he's like, hey, Davey's really cool. And I kind of broached the subject with him, and he was interested, and we had dinner with Davey. And Davey said, yeah, let's write some music together. And we started writing songs, and it was really, it was like a style coalesced really organically. We all wanted to do something different from No Doubt, different from AFI. And it ended up being, for lack of a better term, very 80s inspired, right? By the stuff we loved in the 80s. And we had a lot of fun. It was just really easy. And there was no managers, no record labels. We were doing it not secretly, but we're just doing it quietly, and we wrote almost 30 songs. And we ended up finally taking that to some labels, and we got a record deal, and put that out. And it didn't really fly commercially, but we had a lot of fun. We got a lot of radio airplay in San Diego. I don't know why, but that was great. But we played a bunch of shows. We played a bunch of festivals across the US, and we did a small tour, and it was really fun. And the thing I love about Davey's fans is they are, people are like Davey lovers, and when we would play those shows, like they would sing with Davey every word. And I guess maybe that's what goes on at AFI shows, but it was cool. It was a good experience. And, ended up just being one record. And Davey's, we always knew his day job, or so to speak, is AFI. That's his,
right.
That's his band, so it was a fun thing to do. And so, yeah.
That's so cool. Okay. Well, also just amazing. In 2024, No Doubt performed at Coachella. Yeah. So you guys had been on a 9-year hiatus prior to that. How did it feel to finally get to perform again and at such an iconic place?
That was a really, ended up being really wonderful and amazing for a number of different reasons. The guy who started Coachella is a concert promoter named Paul, and the crazy thing is Paul was around in the old days of No Doubt. Like he used to promote shows in 87, 88, 89. So we kind of came up with Paul as a concert promoter. He would do No Doubt shows at the Roxy and the Whiskey in Hollywood. And he would put us on different bills. And he was just always a supporter of us and always helped us out. And then he went on to start Coachella, and it became like the biggest festival in the world. And so for a lot of years, we, even throughout the different hiatuses, like Paul would come to us and say, "Hey, I really want you guys to play Coachella. It's really important to me." And it kept not working out, for years and years. And then it got real close one year, and then it was COVID. And so, finally in 2024, it happened, and it was amazing. So we weren't like, I tell myself and tell my friends, like, we headlined Coachella. We weren't technically headlining on the poster, but we were the special guest. But we played the Saturday night 8 p.m. slot on the big stage. So I think we headlined Coachella. There was 8. I asked Paul, I go, how many people are going to be watching us? And he said, well, for getting on the web, probably when you're playing, it's going to be 85,000 people. And I was like, what? That's amazing. The hard thing is we hadn't been on stage, together as a band in a long time. And to be honest, that, the anxiety and the nerves are there. But you know what? It went great. And we were also worried, I'll be honest. I was like, Coachella's a really young audience. And I'm not fooling anybody. I'm in my 50s. We all are in our 50s. And all these 20-year-olds, maybe let's prepare for a lackluster reaction. Let's prepare for a festival crowd where they're not really our fans. They're Tyler, the Creator fans, or whatever. And what was amazing, because we didn't have we weren't trying to hype ourselves up on the expectation of the audience response. The audience ended up being amazing. And because of almost what you're describing, because, there are people in their 20s who grew up with our stuff from with their parents or since they were little kids. And so we had at that festival people, teenagers through people older than us, and the audience was amazing. And it was so fun. And the funnest thing about it, even funner than that, was my kids, who are now like teenagers themselves. They were like in the front row and cheering me on. And it was like, it was the best to have them see me. They saw No Doubt when they were little tiny kids, but they never got to really experience a No Doubt concert. So for us, I think for me and Tony and Adrian to have our kids see us perform on that stage, on that scale, was like, it was amazing. It was beautiful.
That gave me chills. I can't even imagine that all coming together. What a beautiful moment.
Yeah, it was beautiful. And there were people, because they filmed the whole thing and they played it live on Yahoo or internet or whatever, YouTube, I don't know. But some of my kids, since they were right up front, they got on camera a bunch, and I was like, God,
cute.
There, yeah. So
I love
people were texting me, I saw your kids on the screen and all that. So,
that's amazing.
Yeah.
Well, is there anything that you would like listeners to keep an eye out for in the coming year, or anything for the 30th anniversary?
I wish I could say there's something coming. But I don't at the moment. I don't see anything coming. But the thing I love about anniversaries is, whether it's our birthdays, wedding anniversaries, album anniversaries, it's just a time. It's a moment to remember and reflect. And I think nostalgia is kind of a beautiful thing. Sitting here at this age, it's good. It's good to enjoy good memories, and the world has a lot of chaos right now, and in all of our lives, there's ups and downs. Life is like a roller coaster. And somehow when we look back on things like the music we loved or people we loved, we tend to forget a lot of the bad things. I think it's kind of human nature to remember the good stuff. And that's what, that's what I love about the 30th anniversary coming up. I mean, it baffles the mind that many years have passed, but it was such an exciting time in my life for so many reasons. And I think for folks like yourself, for anybody who grows up listening to an album, it's going to be a part of that stuff's going to be a part of us, all of our lives. And it's good to reflect back and think, even though Tragic Kingdom, some of the aspects of it, there was struggles and trauma that happened to us back in those days. There's also these beautiful songs we made and these beautiful experiences we got to share. So
I love that so much. And thank you so much for sharing all of your memories. And I love now being able to go through Orange County and be like, that's where Tom went to high school. And like, that's so cool.
Yeah. We're all Orange County locals. It's, I live in Long Beach now, so I'm not too far away. And my doctor is in Orange County. And so, and Orange County has changed, so much in so many ways, but it's great. I love seeing how it's changed. I love how, Orange County's become a lot more diverse, and there's just so much going on. I know it's like the little brother to LA, but Orange County is, there's a lot going on. Obviously, it's a huge powerhouse. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, we're coming to the end of our time, but before I let you go, I have 3 final questions for you that we call the Thoughtful 3.
Okay.
So, what is one album that you think every young aspiring musician should listen to, and why?
Oh my God, that's so hard. Every young aspiring musician. Oh, I love so much music, and I love everything. I love finding, that's the beauty of streaming these days, is you can just go down huge rabbit holes and find these, bands for me with kids, showing my kids stuff. I want my kids to grow up listening to Black Sabbath and Rage Against the Machine and Frank Sinatra and so many others. I'm so bad at single albums like that. The album. This is aging me, and I know Ozzy just passed away, but Black Sabbath Paranoid album is such. To me, it just stands the test of time, and I love it almost more now than when I was a kid. And that's just one, specific style of music that was made in the 70s. But I'm just going to say that because it's on my mind.
Yeah, no, I love that. Well, what piece of advice has stuck with you throughout your career?
This is something, this came from Sting. We got to play when we played the Super Bowl halftime show. We ended up doing a No Doubt song. We did Just a Girl. And if you go on YouTube, you can find this. And then we played Message in a Bottle with Sting. We basically were the backup band, and Gwen and Sting sang that together. And we did Message in a Bottle with him another time in New York. We got to hang out with him a little bit. And he said something once that really stuck with me. And what he said was, music is its own reward. And it's just this idea, like, music can be a pathway to success, or it could be something we listen to, but playing music, like, it's just fun to play music. Like, I used to love going to rehearsals as much as shows, because I love to play music with my friends. And it's its own reward. And it's the beauty of art too. And I feel this way because I'm a hobbyist photographer. I just like to play music and do art because it's fun to do. And I've been very fortunate. I've been able to make a career out of it. But I would like to think that if I didn't make a career out of it, I would still be playing music and doing photography because it's fun, not because it's a means to some goal. It's just it's just fun. I would have done, it all for free. But anyway, yeah.
That's amazing. Well, lastly, when your kids look back on your career, what is one thing that you hope really sticks with them? I'm like, definitely Coachella is on that list.
Yeah. That's a good one. I hope that they are able to look back and say, my dad got to do this really cool stuff, but he's also just a normal, boring dad. And hopefully a good one. One of the amazing things about, for the last 20 years, No Doubt has been on and off again, off again kind of a thing. But the amazing thing about that is that there's been years when I haven't been doing No Doubt and I haven't been doing music professionally, is I got to be home for my kids. I have a lot of friends who are on the road as musicians, or they work in road crews, and they're on the road a lot. And some people love it, but it's really hard when you're a parent. And so I'm glad I got to be home for my kids growing up. And so that's the one thing I hope they see. Like my dad was a rock star, but he was also a dad.
Yeah, that's so special. I've actually didn't put that together when you were talking about the different hiatuses, but that's so nice.
Yeah, I like to look on the bright side of things, and I'm very lucky.
Yeah, definitely. Well, thank you so much for doing this. This is like one of my top favorite episodes.
Okay.
So I really enjoyed getting to talk with you and listening to all those amazing stories. So thank you.
Awesome. You're welcome, Chelsea.